Namaste everyone, Ram here, your Dane Hacker. I'm back for another video. Please, as usual, please subscribe, hit the thumbs up and the notification bell so you find out when we add stuff. On this channel, if you haven't checked out the other content, you're getting a lot of premium channel. I know that it might not have some of the glamour of other channels because I started this mission at the beginning of the year. It's still in its early phases, but as we grow, you're gonna see this take off and you're gonna see our transformation. But there's a lot of great content in this channel that people are paying a lot of money for. And so people pay to work with me privately or with me in group sessions. There's a lot of value that you can have working with somebody that's had my experience and my training, both as a yoga master and Ivy League trained neuroscientist. And I try to bridge both East and West and really not just do away with medicine. Some people do is really bringing everything together cohesively so that you can actually get the treatment, get the direction, get the approaches, the techniques, whatever that you're looking for, that will really help you and help you in a holistic fashion. So today I have another good treat. I want to continue along the lines of my previous video that I did on Ayurveda basics, where I talked about some cycles, and we're going to go into a little bit more detail about that and how does that relate to nature and how does that relate to your particular constitution or body type. These body types in Ayurveda are called Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, and I'm going to go into a little detail shortly, and I'm going to try to break it down in a more simple fashion. Because obviously I'm not here to give you a degree in Ayurveda. What I really want you to understand is how does this relate to you and how you can actually put this to use to help eradicate and end stress in your life. Because really, if you are not in tune with these natural cycles that are inherent within you, and how do you then, with my own body type, how do I interact with the seasons, with the weather, with the climate that I'm living in? I live in Miami, Florida, and for me, it's very different if I were to, I'm living in Miami, Florida, as opposed to living in Canada, let's say. So these are actually very important distinctions that you have to make, that if I'm doing a video and I say, oh, you should be eating, let's say, lots of salads, well, it really depends on your body constitution and where you're living. Yes, you do want to get raw, natural, whole plant-based foods. At least 50% of your diet should be that. But the types of foods you be eating, you may want them to be predominating one thing over another, as you'll see. Okay, so just when I'm describing this, just try to think about where do you fit. And as it relates to when you're stressed out, how do you respond? So think about your constitution and your body type as a particular time of year. So for example, fall, winter, when it's starting to get cold and dry, just think of like the Northeast. Leaves are falling, they're drying up. You're having to use maybe more lotion to keep your skin from drying out. And even your skin and your hair, your scalp, this can be a very challenging. I remember when I moved from Puerto Rico, which is very constant weather, warm weather, nice humidity. When I moved to the Northeast, it was a huge challenge for me. My body just wasn't reacting. My skin just couldn't take it. I was having a lot of issues that when I moved back to Florida, I wasn't having. At that time, of course, I didn't know what I know now on how to actually maintain that balance. But I'm gonna try to give you a little clue on how you can do that. So these Vata winter types, you gotta think of cold, dry, airy. Individuals that are a Vata type don't handle stress well. They're not really centered. So typically when I work with somebody that's a Vata type, I can just already, as I see them, I can see, just imagine a double of them, a subtle counterpart of themselves. It's just decentralized. It's kind of more projected outwardly, and they're not really anchored in themselves, really engaging their body the way that they should. How does a Vata type react to fall, winter? And of course, later on, I'll talk about how this relates to foods you eat and the seasonal aspects of this. And so how do they react to stress? Well, for them, it's going to lead to agitation, anxiety. The nervous system is going to get overstimulated. tissues may dry up, including the skin. And it can lead to, of course, constipation, which is another example of this drying up. One key thing that a Vata type should be doing a lot is making sure that they consume plenty of water to avoid some of this over drying constipation that they tend to see. Their nervous system can get really impacted, particularly in the digestive system. So stress will tend to impact them in the plexuses that relate to the nervous system. And so you want to actually be very mindful of that, and of course leading to anxiety. And of course, if you follow my work and you look at some of my previous work and previous videos, I have some tips to help to manage this anxiety. Then we have the Pitta type. You can think of this as the summertime. You know, summertime is very hot. People that are of this Pitta type are very fiery. And of course, you may be thinking, hey, wait, I have a little bit of this and maybe a little bit of that. Yes, but you'll find that one predominates more than another. But many people have a combination or a mix. And it may also be dependent on the seasons, on certain circumstances in their life, maybe the type of job that they have. So there's a number of different factors, and that's why the best solution is just book a free coaching call, see how I can help you and how I can help you identify where you fit and how I may best be able to serve you, even if you don't live in Miami. Yes, I can still help you if you live somewhere out there. We have online programs as well. And so these Pitta types are going to get easily overheated. And this overheated is not just body. You can see it manifest in anger. The person just kind of boils over and just gets really angry when they're stressed out. They tend to lose their patience, their temper. They can become inflamed, and this inflammation can be manifest in the body, in the joints, for example. These individuals are going to be very competitive and driven. And so one way in which you can actually see this manifestation, this competitive and kind of being a driven type personality, is that when they're stressed, they may tend to obsess over what they're doing, their job, for example. They become workaholics, things of that nature. And of course, what happens there is that type of response that you're having, reaction to stress, is actually exacerbating and depleting your energy reserves, which, as I'll go into a little more detail in the next video, because this is part one, it can actually then make it difficult for you to then relax, fall asleep later. You just don't have the energy to relax, to calm your nervous system, and to be able to then to relax and fall asleep. And so oftentimes, depending on my body type, I tend to take certain approaches. And if you have questions about this, that if there's a certain body type you think you fit in, and I didn't cover something, you have questions, just comment below, and I'll be more than happy to answer that question for you, or make an additional video to answer that. So, depending on the body type, people tend to actually take a certain approach. So you may have a Pitta type, very competitive, very driven, very type A personality, and their way of coping with stress may be to run 5 miles after work, or go to the gym and work out really, really hard, and pound the joints on a treadmill, which is the worst place you could ever run. And they're just pounding their body, a lot of inflammation, a lot of damage, a lot of wear and tear, a lot of burnout. And this actually can be very, very damaging if they don't have good diet as well. It can manifest in heart disease, of course, inflammation. I've talked about it in The Art of Stress-Free Living, and in my a future book that I'm going to start this fall. I'll probably be done sometime in the winter. The Dina Hacker Secrets book. In those books, I talk about how inflammation is at the heart of a lot of these health issues. It's one of those silent killers along with stress. So it's the type of person that's just going to push themselves to the point where they just become even more stressed out. Their anxiety may not be fully conscious in them, because they're going to take their energy, and rather than bottle it up and not know what to do it, which you see in a Vata type, they tend to kind of get a little confused, a little overstimulated, and they start getting anxious. They don't know what to do with energy. A Pitta type is going to really kind of go out and really let that energy out, but oftentimes it just exacerbates their condition. It's going to really burn them out because they're going to lose that energy by letting it out so much. So they're going to let it out maybe through anger, impatience, being very rough, being very physical. And this is actually not a great way to go about it because it just leads to a lot of burnout, low energy, and then depletion that then you don't have reserves later on. When you get home, you're going to continue with that pattern, and it's going to really be a vicious cycle, so you want to be mindful of that. There is a way to conquer this and a way to live stress and disease free, but you have to actually master the art of living in balance, not pushing yourself to extremes, as you've seen if you follow some of my previous work and previous videos, and if you follow me on medium.com at Rama's Rooted Tree. And so mastering that art of being in balance is a challenge, and you have to consider the cycles of nature and the cycles of the season. And in the previous video on Ayurvedic basics, I talk about the 24-hour cycle. There's this 12-hour cycle from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and one from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And I'll put a link at the end of this video, so if you haven't watched it, you can watch it at the end of this video. And then we have the Kapha type. And think of this as spring. So in the spring, what do we have? A lot of raininess, a lot of, not raininess, not even a word, a lot of rain, congestion, holding on to water. So just think of this body type, because remember, we are beings of nature. We manifest nature, not just physically, body, but also psychologically. And so we really have to consider where we're at. How does our body respond? So this body type, they're going to very prone to congestion. So if it's springtime, maybe allergies are gonna be, you're gonna be more susceptible to allergies if you have this body type. And in the winter time, you're gonna be more prone to getting congestion. You want to avoid anything that enhances congestion, like dairy. It's why we at Rama's Rooted Tree advocate for a vegan diet. It has to do also with eco-wellness, ethical principles, how to actually live in balance with nature and the environment, how to be sustainable. The dairy industry, the animal factory farming is at the heart of a number of issues that are causing global catastrophic problems. And so you have to be aware of these things as well. But dairy is something that actually causes your mucus to become a lot more stringy. You know, like think of cheese and pizza, very stringy, and that mucus is not really swept out and moved out of the trachea well and into your esophagus and eliminated. So when your body traps stuff, it's not eliminated, and therefore it can actually lead to more problems, disease problems. But that's just a side note. So how does this manifest, in terms of stress? Well, a person that is of Kapha type will tend to hold on to water more. This doesn't mean that you shouldn't drink water. It's just that you actually have to give the person a certain regime that is maybe more of one of these other types, particularly the Pitta type, where you're trying to get them to agitate, to move, to get some of that stagnation out so that they can start to gain a little bit more fire. That fire will counteract that water, in a sense. It's kind of this elements type of view. This is not an abstract concept. When I talk about elements, whether it's fire or water or air, it's not really an abstract concept. It's a real phenomenon that's occurring within your body, and it affects the entire dynamics of both your mind, your body, and your spirit. Once you understand them and you know how to apply them in your life, and you integrate the practices that I teach at Rama's Rooted Tree and my Dear Hacker Secret Mastermind, or in my Art of Stress-Free Living retreats, it's when you actually start to learn how to integrate this into your life and put it into action, which is the most important thing. Hearing this, whether it's at the gym, walking the dog, in the car, it doesn't really, or in your office, doesn't make any difference if you don't do anything about it. All right, so in this case, stress is now leading to lethargy, stagnation, inactivity, feelings of heaviness, weight gain, of course, which is also related to some of that holding on to water. Some of that weight gain is water-based, but it will also lead to some of the stagnation. So your metabolism stagnates, doesn't mobilize energy. And what do? I reach out for energy outside through foods, and I tend to overeat. This can lead to also depressive type personality. So depression also as well. So you can see that there's a very, very clear difference between these different body types or personality types or energy types and how you're reacting to stress. All right, so I was just finishing saying, little break there, a little edit, because I think I'm just gonna cut the video off here. Then I'll do a second video, part 2. I'll go into details about the second half that's at the bottom here. And then I'll continue with probably a part 3 or 4, just so that I don't make these videos too long and keep this one within the 20-minute time mark, so that it's your brain actually works better if you keep everything within the kind of 20-minute time window. All right, so I hope that served you well. Stay tuned for part 2 coming up shortly, and I hope you have a beautiful day, and I hope that served you well. Take care.